What motivated me was I needed to feed my kids.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
$600 versus 40,000. It's
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
because of where it is.
Because of where it's at. Radio is still powerful. Radio is still king. But to deny all these other sources
right
is stupid.
It's pretty interesting because I think a lot of people sometimes just give up so easy. Welcome back to the show. Today I have a very special guest, Danny Hill, owner of a radio station, DJ, comedian, entrepreneur, a little bit of all of the above. And I'm just so thankful that you're on the show today.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So Danny, when I first met you, our first interaction was you were telling me that you wanted to buy a radio station signal. And I was kind of like, wow, radio, that's still a thing. And you were telling me, absolutely, it's still a thing.
Yep. Number one most reached platform in America, according to Nielsen ratings this last year.
Really?
Yeah.
Still?
Beat out television for the first time ever 2 years ago.
It did?
Yeah. You want to know why?
Why?
It's free.
Okay.
And things that are free, they go really well. So we still own the car. We still own listenership there. Radio, not me, but listenership in the car. And we actually had a resurgence in radio when everyone took a dump in 2020 because then it became important again because it was free and people were hurting for money. So free works. And you'll be surprised at how many people can't afford the internet. And we learned that in COVID too because they had to give out free hotspots to children to do their homework because people didn't have access to internet in their house. So that hasn't changed. They just took away the hotspots. So there's still a high percentage of people out there that just don't have access to things. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to. It's a surprising world out there, but free still conquers all. So the interaction for radio at the last time I saw it was like 94%. So 94% of Americans have interaction with radio once a week, and then underneath that is television. Social media is up there in the like 60s and 50% range. But you have to have a phone to be able to do it or internet access to do it. So radio is still king. Will it go away? I would assume at some point.
Right.
They say it. When I was younger, it was like satellite radio is going to take us all out, and Stern's going to satellite radio. That didn't work out well. One of them went bankrupt, and then they had to move it over and became Cyrus Satellite XM. And then they're like, yeah. And then they show numbers like how many people listen. Well, we have all these numbers. Well, how many of those are for free trials at the beginning of a car? Well, it's a majority of them because a lot of people, when you think about it, and this is the hard truth, right? You have Netflix. They do an increase of $1. People are like, I'm canceling my subscription. And that's Netflix. Like that's like a source of a lot of entertainment.
Right.
And they go up $5 and it goes away. So people, they just can't afford stuff. They're paying for Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, HBO, Disney Plus. Radio's free. It's free.
Radio's free, but
Radio's
it wasn't free for you, man. You had to buy it, right?
Oh, I had to buy it. Yeah, to run it, it's not free. That's where advertisers come in, but I had to buy it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of a little bit of a journey because I remember when you bought the station or the signal, right? And you were really excited about that, but you had to get this antenna positioned, and that wasn't really an easy situation.
I mean, the story, how I got started is there was a radio station that I heard. I was driving one day. My mother had passed away, and she left me some money for an inheritance, and it was $100,000 that was split between me and my sister Jody, and I got $50,000 of it, and she asked me to invest in something, whether it be a home or a business or something like that. And I was going to buy a home, but even then, this was before the market was outrageous. Even then, it was too expensive because I have 5 kids. So the house size I needed was like, that's a $400,000 home, which today is like $1 million home. So it's more unobtainable. Yeah. So I was like, man, that's a lot of money. And then, I know the job I was working at, I didn't know if it was going to stick around because when radio, you're always worried about losing your job. I don't know if it's for every industry, but you're always like, am I going to get fired today? Because I'm in radio as a DJ, you're judged off of ratings.
Right.
So it's a popularity contest. So you have to be popular. And if you're not, and how do you maintain your popularity? So it's always trying to do your thing. So anyway, I was out driving around one day, and I spent a lot of time just driving and crying because my mom had died. And
Right.
I stopped towards Taft. I don't really know how I got to Taft, which I think is the ending of everybody's story to Taft, right? I'm not sure how I got here, but I'm in Taft. So then I heard a station. It was 98.1, and I was like, "What is this?" And it was playing rock, and I Googled it. I looked it up. I contacted the owner. I started talking to him back and forth. Became friends with him, and I kept asking him how much he wanted for the radio station, and he kept saying, and I think it was like 600,000 or 700,000. I'm like, well, I've got 50,000. Like, how do I buy that? So then I called another buddy of mine, and he said, well, you don't own your car, do you? You just make payments on it. And I said, yeah. And I said, you can do that with businesses? And he said, 100%. You make payments on it. If he'll carry a note, buy it and carry a note. So I said, okay. So I called him up, and I said, hey, would you be willing to take $10,000 down and carry a note for me? And then I need the other 40 to like buy equipment, like microphones and lights and stuff that are
Right. Yeah. Kind of important.
kind of
right?
important.
Kind of
Yeah,
need that
I
for the
need it
radio
for
station.
the radio station. And he said no. And I said, all right. So I hung up the phone, and I texted him a picture of my kids. And I said, this is fun for you, but it's life-changing for me. Changed my life. And he wrote back, he just bought a radio station.
No way.
Yeah.
So you literally took it out on the line on a text message and just said, "Hey,
yeah, here it is.
this
And
is
then-
what this means to me."
Well, and I hadn't talked to my wife yet about it. So then that was the hard part, is I had to go home and convince her like we were going to do this.
Right.
Because I don't know how your marriage is, but mine is, she's the brains. Like, I'm just the one that comes up with ideas. So I had to be like, all right, I made this deal. Let's make it work. And she's like, are you kidding? Like, why would we do this? Like, you have a job. You're the OM of a cluster. You're doing radio. Why would you want to do this? I said, well, it's not my money. It's my mom's money. And it's up in Alta Sierra. It's, 60 miles out of the market. We can just make some side money on it. I don't think it'll be a competitive thing. I went down and talked to my boss at the time, Mary Lou Gunn. She since passed away. And she said she didn't see it being an issue. Great. So we did the deal. I bought the station, and I was really just going to sell it to locals in Lake Isabella. That was the goal. And then about 2 months later, Mary Lou Gunn gets a job at Lotus in Fresno, and she takes off, and then they bring in a new guy, and he throws a fit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That you had
I had a radio station.
and
I'm
that
like,
wasn't
dude,
okay.
it's too late. Like,
Yeah, you've already done
I've
it.
already
I made
done
the deal.
And he's like, well, I need proof that she said it was okay. And I was like, well, call her. And he goes, and I need an email that's time and date stamped from before this agreement. Like, she can't just retroactively say it. I was like, well, I was stupid at the time. I got a vocal, it was a verbal thing, right? And I was under contract with them. So he ended up, it was like 10 days before Christmas, 2018. He fired me and gave me a severance package for like a month.
Whoa.
And I had 5 kids. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I went home. I bawled again. What you're going to get from this story is I cry a lot, right? I do a lot of crying.
Well, at least you're being honest about the
Yeah,
whole emotional part of this thing,
I
right?
was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. And my wife's like, well, can we make it work, right? Like, can we make this? And I said, no, we can't. It's up in Lake Isabella. Like, how, I haven't even really turned it on the air yet. You're like, what am I supposed to do? So I went up with an engineer, and we looked at the antenna, and he goes, well, that's not supposed to be pointed downwards. And I go, what do you mean? And the antenna was broken. And it was on, but it had broken off, and it was dangling on the side of the tower. So I was like, will that affect the signal? And he goes, yeah, it's going to affect the signal. Thing's broken. So I bought a new antenna, and I put it up, which is a whole process in itself. 7,000 feet up in the and top of this mountain, 400 feet antenna. So he goes up, and you have to hire climbers, and they get up there and they put it on. So I call a buddy of mine, and I go, hey, we just fixed the antenna. Can you hear it in Bakersfield? And he's, oh, let me go check. Oh, yeah, I can hear it. I go, oh my God, I think we have a Bakersfield station. And so I went and drove it, and it covered, most of Bakersfield. There's a couple of parts that didn't cover very well, but it covered most, and that was it. So then I spent the next month of my severance money to keep us afloat, to go and try to get advertisers on it.
Right.
And the first one that came over was Butology. and they stayed on all the way for like 7 years until just recently. They were on this whole time and they were spending money. And then there was another guy, Ted. He since passed away. He owned a vape shop downtown, and he came on. I remember the first clients, and then Holders came on, and then it was like, oh my God,
This is happening.
this is working.
This
Yeah.
is working.
And then it was like, and then I would get a lot of like comments from the other people in radio. I would see them and they were like, yeah, you're going to fail at this. This isn't going to work.
Dude, genius,
But I didn't-
right? Yeah, that's exactly what you want to hear when you're like trying to feed your
I
family,
wasn't-
right?
Yeah, I wasn't really motivated. It was weird because people, they always say, the haters or people that get mad, they say isn't going to work. That didn't motivate me because I didn't really care
Right.
if anyone else. What motivated me was I needed to feed my kids.
Right.
That's what motivated me. So if he had kept me on at that station, I never would have done what I've done now. So looking back, I'm very grateful that he let me go, because if he hadn't let me go, I wouldn't have tried hard to make this dream become a reality.
Right.
So that was 7 years ago. So now I'm in my 7th year. My note on the station's 10 years long.
Okay.
So
you got 3 years
I got
left.
3 years left. I could probably pay it off now if I wanted to, but it's like anything else. I'd rather just make the payments and
Sure.
keep the capital,
Yeah, because you never know what might come.
You never
up.
know. Yeah, you never know what you're going to need.
The antenna might break again
Exactly,
or something
or
like
another
that, right?
fire, and so since then, we've gone through COVID, which nobody was advertising really through that, except for restaurants and plastic surgeons. And then we made it through a fire. There was a thing called the French fire. It burned down the whole side of the hill our antenna was on.
Okay,
but it didn't
survive.
It didn't burn down the building because it's a World War II bunker up there.
Okay.
It's an old transmission site. They built these across the nation, and they're set up specifically to where if there was a war, they could go up there and they could broadcast from this building. So it's like a cylinder block building. So it burned all around it, and the fire came, but it didn't burn the building, right?
Okay.
And the
yeah.
tower was so tall and metal anyway, it didn't do anything to damage it. But it did knock out the power. So they had to redo the power line. So I went up for 39 days or 38 days every single day with a generator, and I poured gasoline into the generator and I turned it on and I powered the radio stations. So I did that for a long time. And I live in Southwest Bakersfield, so it took me, I had to drive an hour and 45 minutes to get there. And then I would do it all day long until it was dark. And then I would turn it off at nighttime and I would drive all the way back down and do it. And then getting gasoline was an active fire zone too for the first 20 days.
Right.
So I had to get a big container that would hold this gas. And I finally worked out a deal there was a company up there called Geolinks, and they had this 100-gallon container that would hold gasoline. And I was like, hey, can I splice into that and I'll just keep putting gas, I'll pay for the gas. And they're like, sure, no problem. So I went up with a truck every 3 days and I would hook that up and I would take it down the hill into Wofford Heights and I'd fill it up with 100 gallons of gasoline, very expensive. And I would drive it all the way up and then I would plug it into the generator, turn it on. And then I would have to monitor it because those generators have emission detectors.
Right.
So if the wind changed direction, it would turn off the generator and the the station would go off the air. So I'd always have to watch it. And then I had to put an umbrella is what I learned. So when I got a fan, a big box fan, and I put it up and I had the box fan blowing towards the emission portion of it. So it would blow that way always, even if the wind changed. And then if there was rain or whatever, so I had an umbrella up. I had this whole makeshift thing, but it kept us on the air for that time period. And then when it was done and the power came back on, it was like a miracle. I was like, oh my God. And it was really affected me because once I was able not to go up every day, then I started getting sick to my stomach.
Right.
And I was nauseous and I just didn't want to go, right? I just didn't want to do it because that drive up the canyon is scary.
Right.
Getting up to Alta Sierra is scary. And then I'm going in a fire zone with gasoline. Like, that's stupid. But I had to do it because, I had clients on that were feeding my kids, right?
And you were willing to do whatever it took to get it done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't have a YouTube about like how to keep your radio station on in a fire zone with no power, right?
Yeah, you don't
yeah,
know.
you didn't figure there wasn't a manual on that, right?
So I did that, and every step of the way, and I've tried quitting this multiple times. I don't think I can do it. 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 Every single time it's been my wife. You can do this. Just one more day. Just give it one more week. If you can just do one more, you can do this. And I've pushed forward because of her. So if I didn't have my wife in my life, I would have already quit and moved on. I would, and then she would always say, "You told me," and this is the truth. And looking back on it, it's so silly, but it's true. She said, "You told me you could get a job at Target during the day and own a radio station at night." And I said, "Yeah, I could if I had to." She's like, "Well, instead of working at Target, go sell some ads and put some clients on so at night you can just be at home with us." So I did. I went out
It's amazing.
every single day for 6 months, and I knocked on door after door after door, and I begged and pleaded and and then I had some people come on, and then it started to work and started to get bigger and bigger, and then I got another radio station. I bought 93.5, and then I bought 103.7 and 1140 AM, and it was
you got really good coverage. I mean, like, what's
yeah,
your coverage
the
area
map
now?
of it now is huge. I mean, between 98.1 and 93.5, it covers all the way up to Fresno. So Fresno, Visalia, Tulare, Hanford, Delano, Shafter, Bakersfield. We're the largest signal that anyone's ever had, and it's because we're up so high. And people in radio love it. They love it because it's a loophole for radio that not too many people have the opportunity to do. And it's not really a loophole. It's just 100,000 watts on the ground at sea level. You have to imagine it like a hose, right? So if you have a hose and you put it on full pressure and it shoots up in the air and comes down, it'll make water a mess around you. But if you take that hose and you put it on your roof and you shoot it off at full pressure, it'll make everything wet around you because height trumps power, right? Because radio works by line of sight. So I'm at 7,200 feet. And even though the station's only like 79 watts, it doesn't matter.
You don't need all
I
of
don't
that
need
power.
to shoot up. I'm already up. I just need to trickle down.
Absolutely.
And it's just enough power to come down. So it made my overhead a lot less. So other stations that are paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month in electricity to cover the same area I have, I'm doing for $600.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
$600 versus 40,000. It's
Yeah.
amazing because of where it is.
Because of where it's at.
Right.
And they don't, but they want, and they go, "Oh my God." Now, is it as good as a 100,000 watt station? No, I don't penetrate buildings, right? Like they do.
Yeah.
But we live in a world now where no one owns a radio.
That's so true.
They stream on Alexa or they stream on a digital device.
Right.
So I was like, I don't need to penetrate buildings. I just need to penetrate a car. Because that's where, as we said in the beginning, that's where radio lives. It lives in the car. And then once Alexa came out and became a thing, radio started to live again in homes. But not because they got a new radio that they were playing it off of, because they were saying, "Alexa, stream Rewind 98.1. Alexa, play Outlaw 103.7. Well, I do that. I have apps. I have all that stuff.
Yeah, you have it all dialed in.
So it didn't matter. So they're wasting electricity and they're wasting money by trying to penetrate into buildings that aren't necessarily going to receive them. The last time I went into a business and saw a radio with an antenna on it was years ago. But they all stream. They all digitally stream. So, and they want to hear their local stuff. And that's where the adapting, where being young, most radio station owners are 90. They're 100.
That makes sense,
They're
right? Because
old.
that was the medium of
Yes.
information transmission back in the day.
Yeah.
That's how everybody got their info, right? Not everybody had TV and
Yeah.
internet wasn't around.
And
So
they feel like radio is still, and I think radio, and I'm passionate about it, radio is still powerful, radio is still king, but to deny all these other sources is stupid.
Absolutely.
And that's why I was like, I'm going to get into digital sales. I did digital. I have clients that do digital. I'm going to get into selling. I'm now just, as of this last week, my wife works for Channel 17. She's a lifestyle host. So I said, hey, I want to start, how do I sell packages for Channel 17? I want people who want TV. They're like, well, you can be an agency. I said, I'm an agency now. Then I'll be an agency. I'll buy ads for that. And then how do you, with radio and then social media. And social media, I learned how to do social media back when MySpace kind of kicked in.
MySpace.
Yeah.
You might need to clarify that for some of the listeners.
Yeah, MySpace was the first one before Facebook.
Yep.
And but you used to have to do codes on it. So by default, it kind of taught us all how to do coding, because if you wanted the background to be blue, you had to go grab a code that was like C__/1 BLU, and you had to toss it on your code of your page, and then it was blue. And then sometimes it wouldn't work, so you'd have to mess with the coding or whatever. So I learned how to do coding, not because I wanted to, just because MySpace. And then I did okay with MySpace, and then Facebook came out, and I was doing okay with Facebook. And then I met this guy. I'm assuming it's a guy. He's an anonymous person online.
Okay.
And we don't cuss on this, so I won't tell you what his name is, but
Fair enough. Yeah.
He's Blank Radio Jock.
Okay.
And Blank Radio Jock is a guy who's in our industry, who's anonymous, who makes fun of corporations.
Okay.
And we all follow him because we think it's hilarious that he makes fun of these corporate owners for iHeart and Alpha and all these people.
Right.
And we can't do it because we need a job at one point, but he does it anonymously, and it's funny.
Okay.
And he only has like 3,000 followers, 4,000 followers, but his interaction is damn near 90%.
Wow.
Because everybody that's following him, he's talking to them because it pertains to them, right?
Right.
So I remember seeing this, and I was like, dang, his interaction's larger than most of these radio stations in town that claim to have 100,000 followers.
Right.
And I go, why is that? So I really started like looking into why is that? Why do followers not equal interaction? And what I came to terms with was either they bought the followers, which people buy these bots and they're not real, or they're not relating to them anymore. So I was like, how do you relate to people? So I started looking at his stuff, and I was like, well, he relates to people because he has one topic, and it's radio.
Right.
And he talks about it over and over and over again.
Okay.
Doesn't switch. So I was like, well, what's my topic? It's Bakersfield.
Yeah.
Bakersfield's my topic.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to make everything I say about Bakersfield, and I'm going to do it. So I did it with my radio station page, Rewind 98.1, and I got to 180,000 followers and 40 million views a month within 6 months.
Really?
6 months, because it was all about Bakersfield. But what my problem with that is I was taking other people's content and making memes out of it in videos. And I kept getting hit with copyright infringements because the people who had the original post were pissed that I was getting more views off of it than they were. And I hadn't monetized any of this because I didn't know how to monetize it. So I was just doing it for funsies. And so it got banned. And I'm like, what do I do? So I'm like, well, I know the secret. I know the secret sauce. So I just did it again on my own page, but this time with my own videos.
Well, which are pretty funny, by the way. And, you say stuff because you are a comedian also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you make jokes about stuff, and, you're very passionate. And, I think the big one was this whole apple orange bit you do.
The apple, yeah.
Right? And when people first saw it, I can't even tell you how many people that were outside of, the state that are like, hey, does this really go on in Bakersfield? And right, because I mean, if you just tell everybody, like you go, oh, you're at the gas station, if there's an apple and an orange, and this is
I don't know how many people saw it. Let me see. I just don't want to be lying, so I'll tell you right now.
okay, fair enough, yeah.
So this is it, but I'll tell you the background of where that came from, because I have it pinned up here on my page. But it's at I want to say it's like 30.6 million views or 30.
So it's still going.
Yeah, it's still going. And the crazy part about it is there's more people have seen that than the finale of Friends, right?
Get out of here. Really?
Yeah, because I started looking up because I was like, how many people watched this or how many people watched that? And that's how big it was. And 30.8 million is where it is. I have other ones for 7.4, 4.1 million. Some that are
and this is all about Bakersfield, right?
Bakersfield.
You kind of make some fun, you put this thing. But what was the premise of that? You
Okay,
told me
so
it was a joke,
so the
right?
apples and oranges one was I had a buddy call me up, and I literally had just found out that the other page had been shut down. So I was like, I gotta have to do something on my page. So I did, like, the first video I did was like this, when people from LA visit Bakersfield, they're like, oh, it's so hot, da-da-da. And like no one really liked it. And I was like, all right, well, I know how this works. You just gotta keep pushing this same content. And then I got a call from my buddy Jeff, who lives in Hanford, and he said, hey, have you heard about upside down pineapples? And I said, what does that mean? And he goes, it's like for swingers. And I go, why is that a big deal? He goes, well, they banned it on this cruise ship. You can't bring in pineapples and put them upside down. I go, is that really a thing? So I Google it, and it's true. So they use these like pineapples, I guess, as like to notify other people they're swingers.
Okay.
So I was like, fruit, that's funny. And then I pull into a gas station, and there's legitimately an apple and an orange up there.
On the top of the pump.
Yeah, and I go, oh. So I'm like, what could I do that would be stupid and funny about fruit? And he just told me that pineapples are swingers. I go, well, this is obviously a code for drug dealers. I don't know, right? So I do one as a joke, and I'm like, hey, Jeff, look what I found. This one's for drug dealers. Ah! And I'm like, no, I think I should present this like it's real. Like I'm a news reporter.
Right.
Like this is for real. And I was like, hey, this is a heads up. If you happen to be at a gas station, you see an apple and orange on a pump, just so you know that's a cue for drug dealers. And they're watching me. And I was at the Valley Plaza Mall intersection over there. So I knew if I span back, there'd be cars moving because it's a busy intersection. And I go, in fact, they're watching me right now. And I go back in. So you see a car move in the background. I don't know. So then I go, just a heads up. If you see fruit, you can buy it inside, but not on top. Don't do it on top. Right?
Right.
And I post it. And my buddy Jeff is like, ah.
Yeah, like funny, haha, right?
Fruit reference, right? Like this one's about, and I literally did that for him. And then I go home and I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and my notifications are just ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, what is this? And I look and I'm like, oh my God, babe, like there's like 20,000 views on this video. And she's like, that's a lot. And I go, yeah, why is that? And people are like, haha, funny, 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 funny. I told my mom about it. Be careful. I'm like, what? And then it was like, I'm glad you told me. Thanks, Danny. And I was like, oh, I think they think it's real, right? And she's like, yeah, people are stupid. I go, oh no, well, what should I do? She's like, what does it matter? You can't like, once you ring a bell, you can't unring it, right? So she's like, you can do a follow-up video. I guess it says it was a joke or whatever.
As a disclaimer.
Yeah, as a disclaimer. I don't know. So I'm like, whatever. It's probably going to die off. By that afternoon, it had reached 1 million people. And by the next day, I was getting calls from television stations asking if they could interview me about how I cracked the code for drug dealers in Bakersfield.
No.
And then by that evening, I got a call from BPD, sheriffs and deputies going, hey, we want to talk to you about, you know, this video you made about the drug dealers that are going on at gas stations with apples and oranges. And I'm like, bro, this ain't real. Well, you said it very seriously. I go, a lot of people say serious stuff online and it's not real. So what I learned in that very moment was whether it's true or not, if you say it like it is, 80% of the people will believe you. And I went, oh, that's it. That's going to be my thing. So I started doing those videos. In the city of Bakersfield, California, they recently said that you're not allowed to have chickens on top of your car unless you're driving 50 miles an hour. Right? Like stuff. And I kept trying to push the limit.
And then people do that. The other funny one was you were talking about the Bermuda Triangle and
the
people going shopping.
And Bakersfield's warning the public about the Bermuda Triangle of shopping. Da, da, da. Yeah, because I was sitting there waiting for my wife to get Sephora stuff, and I'm like, oh. So then I realized, I'm like, oh, here's what I got to do. I got to use my own video. So I record stupid video wherever I'm at, record a video. And then I let it sit on my phone and I look back on it and go, how can this be a joke? Like, what's funny about this? What could be funny without trying not to be too offensive, but what could be funny? And then I got into this whole, Edgar's videos. There was a lot of Edgar videos, and Edgar is a type of haircut that kids do. Where it's like, I don't even know what an Edgar is. Yeah, so an Edgar is a type of haircut, and they're very prominent. So, and they're the ones that are typically popping wheelies in large groups and bikes, right? So when you see them on the street, when there's like 50 or 60 of them, and they're popping wheelies, and they all have the same haircut. So I would do videos of them, and I would say, the city of Bakersfield is proud to announce the 2nd annual Edgar Parade, which is happening, downtown. And then those would take off, right? And then, so that's what it was. So now I'm up to like 65,000 on this account, and I'm averaging 10 million views every 30 days. And people keep coming up and saying hi. It's really weird. How are you?
Does it kind of trip you out a little bit because you're like, hey, I did this as a joke, and
it
was like a ha-ha moment. And
and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And,
but you know what though? There was some thought behind this. It wasn't like this was just like when you really explain how you kind of got to this point of, hey, you started on your radio station and you wanted to make it about Bakersfield, and then that didn't work out. So you're like, okay, but I know this has some traction, so I'm going to do this again, right?
I'm
And
gonna
I'm going
do
to do
it
a little bit
again,
different.
yeah.
And you were just kind of throwing stuff out there to see what worked. But, I think the common theme here when we're really talking about, like, whether it's the radio station or whether it's social media or whatever it is, like, it seems like whenever you kind of met some level of friction or pushback, you figured it out, and, right on for you, like, giving credit to your wife, to encourage you, and,
She's the only
you know,
reason, yeah.
absolutely. But it's pretty interesting because I think a lot of people sometimes just give up so easy.
The internet's difficult. If I hadn't done radio my whole life, I was used to people being mean to me.
Okay.
So being mean to me is not something that really affects me. I'm used to it. I don't like it. People will say they don't care. We all care.
Right.
It's how you let it affect you is the problem. And I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. But I've had people call me fat and ugly and pale skinned and ginger my whole life. So I'm used to that. So when these videos started going viral and they were mean, these people say mean things, it didn't sit well with my family.
Okay.
My wife was like, I can't read the comments because they're so mean to you. Right. My children were like, Dad, why are they saying such horrible things to you? And I said, that's how the internet works. The internet is a horrible place. And I want them to see that, right? It's a horrible place,
so you got a
full
teaching
of
moment.
angry and sad people. And they're saying very, very mean things to me because I've done a joke and they want to be seen. So 9 times out of 10, if I commented back on them, he recognized
it. Right.
He recognized me or he said something to me, then that was it.
Right.
So and I would just, I'm always commenting back and forth with a lot of these people. So I've kind of weeded out a lot of the mean. I've blocked a lot of people. I don't need the interaction. But so now it's kind of a core group of people that think it's funny. And when the new people come in, they realize like, oh, this is a joke. This is where this goes from,
Yeah.
But
and it's entertainment.
That's all
like
it is,
to
and it's free
entertain, right?
entertainment. I did
It
one
is.
last week where it was a bulldozer followed by a garbage truck. And I said, the city of Bakersfield has sent out a garbage truck to Taft to clean up the streets, but it had to return because it couldn't tell the difference between trash and Taft.
Oh man. So that was kind of like your what do you got, rivalry with Bakersfield versus Taft?
No, I had to choose a city. I knew what the joke was going to be, but I didn't know which city to choose. But I have a lot of friends from Taft, and that's all they say about Taft. They're from there, and that's what they say.
Interesting.
So I was like, oh, Taft will be the easy one. The one that is always a good fallback one is Oildale or Arvin, because they're used to it, right? The people who get the most offended are rich people. I did one about Hagen Oaks that fired them up.
Okay.
I did a video for their lights, and I said
the Christmas lights?
Yeah, I said
Okay.
once a year the people in Hagen Oaks, and in the city of Bakersfield, once a year the rich people of Hagen Oaks allow poor people in to see what it's like to have health care, right? And it was a video of their lights all set up, right?
Okay.
And
dude, they take that pretty seriously.
Well,
over
I didn't
there, man.
realize there was apparently some sort of argument going on with them. Half the community doesn't want to do it anymore, and the other half does.
Oh, really?
So they were like, they used it as like reason to like not want to do it. And they were like, look, we've become a joke, or the people are mad, right? And then I started getting messages and how dare you and da 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 da.
So like literally like, how dare you?
Yeah, how dare you? Those are my favorite ones. How dare you?
I mean, that's kind of stern.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, I dared, right? So, that's it. And I try not to, but I really don't. I always think it's funny, and I think it's stuff that we're all thinking about in Bakersfield.
Got it.
But it's not offensive. Like I'm not.
Right. You're not trying to
me
offend
saying
anybody. You're
people
just
from
trying
Hagen
to
Oaks are rich is not. If that offends you, you're rich, right? Like that's not offensive. That's not offensive. Those are rich homes. That's where rich people live. They live over there. That's not offensive to say that.
Right. And you were just joking about it, and you were making a post. You're just kind of bringing light, if anything. I mean, no pun intended, because it's Christmas lights.
Yeah,
but,
Christmas
right?
lights. Yeah, lights the fact that only rich neighborhoods do this. Like we're not going to Southeast Bakersfield to check out the homes around Martin Luther King Park to see what their lights are like. I'm sure they're nice, but we ain't going there. You know what I mean? So it's like Hagen Oaks. That's a rich neighborhood. Congratulations, you live in a nice neighborhood.
But it's amazing though. I mean, just to kind of talk about this emotional response that you're getting, right? Like from people that are either upset, offended, or want to say mean stuff or whatever. I mean, or hey, thanks for informing me that when I'm traveling, I shouldn't, if I see an apple and
Yeah, an
orange, that type
apple
of
and
guess, I like
orange,
to do
yeah.
this. But I mean, I think what's funny about it is that that's kind of what you're doing. You're invoking some level of emotion, right? When you're just putting this information out there. And some people probably have really good laughs, right? They like enjoy it, or
I
they're
think a
from
lot
here.
of I think a lot of people do. Some people get really upset, and you know, and luckily I'm a dude and I'm a pretty big guy, so um, I haven't had any big interactions. But there is other women here locally, and the stuff they say to female influencers is horrible.
Oh, wow.
There's a lady here in town who's she goes by Stormtrooper, I think, but you'll recognize her videos once I say it. She just basically drives around Bakersfield and she shows people cutting her off, and she shows
Okay.
like, and so
Okay.
it's been around town. But she's got like maybe 20,000 followers, but she'll message me and be like, "Do you get death threats?"
What?
And I'll go, "No." And she'll send me screenshots of the death threats she gets from people. And I go, "No, they don't do that to me." Like they mouth off, but they never say they're gonna kill me, right?
Right.
But she gets a lot of that. So I think it's also depending on if you're a man or woman online too. Because she does some stuff. But anyway, the whole internet thing, the whole social media thing is like my 7th job of the day.
Right.
So it's always been like, I didn't care. If it's funny to me, it's a joke, and then it started getting bigger and bigger, and now people want to take photos at grocery
Really?
stores, and like every time I go to Trader Joe's.
Really? Like you're like the official
Yeah,
Trader Joe's
and they always
guy?
have to tell me what video, and it's so funny what video resonates with them. Just like there's like 3 videos you remember. I've done 546 videos to date, right?
Fair enough.
And then there's 3 videos that resonated with you. There's 3 videos that resonate with everybody, and they always come up and they're like, "Oh, that one you did with the guy hotboxing the car," and I'm like, yeah, I remember that one." And they're like, "So funny," and I go, "Oh, thanks. I'm glad you like that." I've yet to have anybody be like, "Dude, that was messed up. That was messed up," but they think it's funny. A lot of cops, I have police officers all the time come up, they watch my stuff. They're filling out reports and they think it's funny, right? The people who get the most offended, I think, are people not from Bakersfield.
Right.
Because I learned that they don't want us to have nice things in Bakersfield.
Really?
So those are the ones that whenever I show something nice, they're the one. That's the video that really, really gets them upset.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny that you've kind of gone through this journey. I mean, you go from a very, you lose your mom, you get an inheritance, and you decide to get a radio station, and then you end up losing your job. So this becomes the primary, like, financial support for you. And then you just kind of continue on and keep pushing. And now you're 3 years out from paying off your radio station, and you've got quite a lot of things going for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Every day is a new adventure, and that's my wife's like, "We should be proud of what we have," and I go, "Yeah, but I'm not. We could lose it at any moment, right?" And it's, I don't know. In the sales world, it's always, what can you do for me today? From zero to hero every day. So it's like, that's great. Yesterday was good. Last year was good. But what's this year going to be? Like, I'm not done. And I just have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. In my mind, the goal is to one day have a team of people that could work for me. And then I could, I could be a part of it with my ideas, but have people that are just as passionate. But it's hard when you own your own business. You'll never find someone as passionate about what you do as you are. You have people that maybe enjoy it, but not the passion, not the worry. I have a laptop next to my bed. Every night before I go to bed, I check my stations to make sure they're on. I have a home studio. I record my show from home. And that's another portion of it. Me and my wife were syndicated.
Right.
And we got syndicated during COVID because everybody was losing their jobs, but they still needed to run programming. So we started syndicating our show that way. So yeah, it's been a lot. So the social media thing's been a nice bonus, but it's been interesting because I use it as a sales technique now because, you go in and you go, our competitor will be like, "Well, we have, the 10 share. We have the most listeners in town." And I'm like, "Really? You have the most listeners? And you've been there for how long? 8 years. 8 years you've been there. So in 8 years, you've had the most listeners and you still have 2,000 followers on Instagram." So either 2 things are correct with that statement. They're either there and they don't like you, right? Because they've had enough time to figure out who you are because you've said it on the air multiple times. Come follow me here. Or it's not real, or you really don't have that many listeners.
Right.
So I don't know which one it is, but I'll tell you what I have. 65,000 people following me that are mostly from Bakersfield. Because and it filters into my station, because if they like the social media content, Then they go, well, how do I hear this guy's show?
Right.
I want to know more about this guy. Okay, great. Well, here's the radio station I'm on. I own it. And I think that being a younger owner, going back to the old ownership, is you have to realize that this is no longer just a radio station, come listen to me. It's a game of social media. You have to cast your net wide, and you have to collect as much as you can to bring it into a central source, right? So I think, the next step for us is probably going to be setting up cameras like this and doing the show. And I'm to the point now where I need help because I can't physically do everything all day long.
Dude, I know. You're constantly on the go. Right?
Yeah, and
I mean, just like all day long.
With this, once this is done, I'm gonna go pick up my kids. I've got 5 kids I got to deal with. Yeah, and I got to go pick them up. I got to get dinner ready for them. My wife, she's on TV. She'll get home by 4 or 5ish. Then we have contracts from clients we've already signed. We're gonna do contracts and stuff.
Right.
We'll do that until tonight. And tonight it's a weekend, right? So most people have this off. I don't have it off. So we're gonna do that until about 7 or 8. Then we got to record our show for Monday, and we're going to do that until about 10 or 11. And then once 11 o'clock hits, we'll have 11 until I pass out to watch a show. And then I'll do it all over again tomorrow, and tomorrow's Saturday, which reminds me, I have shows to load in. Because if the shows aren't loaded in right, I get calls from the jocks like, hey, my show, why isn't it airing? So I got to, make sure that's loaded in correctly. So I'll do that Saturday. And then Sunday, this is actually good stuff. Sunday, I got invited to the Grammys. So first time I've ever been, I'm going to go to the Grammys, and I'm not winning anything. I'm just going to sit in the background and watch people, I guess, accept awards. But yeah, so that's Sunday. And Sunday's normally my day off, but I'm like, we're never going to get
Well, it's a Grammy, so.
That's what I said. I told my wife, I said, we're never going to get invited again. Like, this is a one-time deal. One time. I took photos. I got invited to Christina Aguilera's house once to listen to a music thing. And they said, don't take any pictures. And I was like, I'm never getting invited back. I'm taking pictures. So I snuck so many pictures and photographs. I have them all I put them up on my social media. They were so pissed. We told you not to take any photos. I go, yeah, don't invite me back. You weren't going to anyway. Like, I wasn't an open invitation to her house. Like, trust me. I'm aware. That's why whenever I see celebrities and they're so pissed, like I met Gordon Ramsay at Disneyland once, and he walked by me, and I was like, Gordon, can I get a picture? And he goes, next time. I go, next time? Some next time. I'm never going to see you again. When's our path going to cross again? If I see him again, I'll be like, next time.
Next time, you got to get that picture.
Next time. But yeah. But that's, I don't know. Slips.
Man, what an amazing story, man. That was great. And appreciate you taking the time today to come on the show and, man, share this journey. It's pretty awesome. So how do people find you?
At DJ Danny Hill on all platforms. TikTok, as long as that lasts. I don't think that'll last much longer. Is at DJ Danny Hill. Instagram, all of them, everything. I don't know. There's so many of them out there now. True Social at DJ Danny Hill. It's all there. DJ Danny Hill. Find it.
All right, man. That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
No, thanks for having me, man.
No, that's great. Well, if you've found this episode helpful, which I think a lot of people should, because it is a great story about someone who has a lot of perseverance, has a lot of experience. Even though he gets a lot of resistance, he keeps pushing through. So share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And always, if you find the time, I'd really like you to rate the show and subscribe. And you could find us on YouTube at HeyCharles Biz, HeyCharles77 on Instagram and TikTok, Charles Ernst on LinkedIn, and HeyCharles on Apple Podcast and Spotify. See you next time.